I'm going to start cutting away on that stump there, but I actually just wanted to say something about Thanksgiving. I heard an old Rush Limbaugh program, and when I say old, it was 4 or 5 years ago, soon before he would pass away, and he had a show on the day before Thanksgiving, and they played it on a certain radio station that I was listening to on the way up here to the mountains. And Rush said that people really, in the history books, that they don't teach about the Pilgrims in the right way, that really what happened was around 1620, this group of about 40 people wanted religious freedom, and they went to speak to people in England and especially in London. These people didn't have money, but they wanted to practice their religion freely without interference from King James I in England, and who wanted things exactly the way he wanted things, both religiously and in terms of the English government. And anyway, so there was a group of merchants in England that sponsored these people to come over to America on this ship. And one of them was Mr. Bradford. He was one of the 40. And on the way over, they all signed a contract, and it was a contract that was agreed upon back in England, and they all agreed that when they got to America, they would equally own each person would own one share of the common community that the Pilgrims were setting up. And they got to America, and it was a rough boat ride or ship ride. It wasn't like the ships that we have today. And so they got to America, and they started setting up in this very strange place. It was a frontier. There was nothing going on, but there were Indians, a lot of Indians. And so they got through the first winter, but 20 of the 40 people died, including Mr. Bradford's wife. And what happened was, though, there were 20 people left, so they started that experiment of this communal living where everybody had one share of this community and of the land, and no one owned anything, and everybody contributed whatever they made and whatever they grew and into the community. Anyway, this Pilgrim community did terribly, and it was faltering, and Mr. Bradford, who was the lead in this community, in this Pilgrim community, so he realized that this communal concept of living where everybody just owns a share of the community but doesn't own anything in the community wasn't working. It wasn't self-motivating for people. People were feeling, among these 20 people that survived, that they would work hard and they would give all their produce and everything that they worked hard for to the community, but there were a number of individuals in the community that weren't working hard, and the people that were working hard felt like they're supporting these other people's wives and children who weren't working hard, and they said, so why should we work hard? Because they're not working hard, and then nobody worked hard, and it was failing. So Mr. Bradford realized this, and he said, okay, what we're going to do now, we're going to change our platform, and we're now going to have private ownership. It was basically going to be a free enterprise, capitalistic turn of events for the Pilgrim community. And so he divided up what was a communal acreage, many acres, and gave everybody their own plot, and they owned their own plot of land. And literally that next season and planting season and thereafter, the Pilgrims started flourishing and doing great, and they actually produced so much agriculture and other products that they started trading with the Indians, and the Indians would give them things that the Pilgrims didn't have. The Pilgrims would give them things, would give the Indians things that the Indians didn't have, and the Pilgrims started flourishing. And at that point, that's when the Pilgrims gave thanks and said, we have so much to be thankful for here in this new land of America that we have settled here. And so that was the first Thanksgiving, that they were giving thanks to God that they were finally flourishing and that things were working out, and they felt internally and spiritually that they needed to give thanks. And I know for myself, I need to give thanks also. What I have is much more than I deserve and much better than I deserve. I think Mr. Ramsey says that in his radio show. My daughter Shoshana, who was up here with me last time, she told me she listens to I think Dave Ramsey all the time, and when he says that when people ask him how he's doing, he says, a lot better than I deserve. I feel the same way. I have a lovely family. I have everything I need, and I have to be thankful, and it's what an appropriate day to express that, the day before Thanksgiving. I'm going to start cutting away at the stump there so that when my mill comes down, that it can clear and I can just pull it up and then go do another slice. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to deal with this trunk that's still in the ground, and the reason is, so this is the log I'm going to cut right here, and this is my Alaskan mill, and there'll be a chainsaw in here. I'll have my 93cc, and I'm going to come and I'm going to start slicing from that edge, that side of the log, and I'm going to come down here. I'm going to let gravity help me, and then I'm going to come out over on this side. And so we can see here that this is about a foot wide, a little more than a foot, maybe 13 inches. And so what I need is, I need to create 13 inches of space here so that there'll be room for my Alaskan mill to come off of the log for the slices that I want. Because if I don't create that space over here, at least, let's say 14, 15 inches, when I come off of that log, off of this blue oak log with the mill, as I'm slicing the wood, the mill's going to get caught up in this stump over here. So I'm going to, right now, I'm just going to take down probably about 15 inches of this stump. So what I just discovered as I used my small chainsaw is it's going to take a long time. The small chainsaw is not powerful enough to cut through that wood at a good speed. So I'm going to turn to my big chainsaw and take care of that. what's happening is I'm cutting off a huge wedge, and so the wedge, as it's getting close to the end, it's actually coming down on the bar in the chain, and it was creating trouble. So I'm going to put a wedge, my own wedge, in this big blue oak wedge once I get the chainsaw in there, and to avoid that problem and solve that problem. These are 2 wedges, and what I'm going to do is, you see, I just put it in right now. You can't, it's hard to see, but it just opened up the blue oak wedge to about 1/2 inch. So it's going to just be easy to finish off the cut with the chainsaw. And I got almost all the way. I hear it actually cracking once I put in my homemade wedges. How it just slides in there. It just slides in there very easily. That's it. And we can see that using that big chainsaw just went right through it, that 93cc Husqvarna. It just went right through that blue oak. Blue oak is so much denser, like I've mentioned before, to cedar. And anyway, I'm just going to remove the blue oak wedge that I just cut. Took out my own wedges. There she is. It's a beautiful, beautiful wedge. A blue oak. Could be used for something. Don't know yet what, but it's amazing. It weighs about 50, 60 pounds, and it's just a small piece of wood, but it's just the dense blue oak. So that's what it does. So anyway, I've created a big space here, and just imagine that there's that big chainsaw in here, and this is the mill, and I'm coming down the blue oak piece that I cut that I'm going to slice up, and I come down here, and there's going to be enough room at least for 4 or 5 slices, and then I can cut off another piece of that stump if I need to. And what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna set up the rails so I can take off my first slice of the blue oak, the 9-footer, and these rails are going to allow me to, with the mill and the chainsaw, it's going to allow me to create a flat first cut. So before I actually place the rails on top of this 9-footer, I just wanted to show you what I did here. So this is the 9-foot log that I cut last time with my daughter Shoshana. And you can see here it looks beautiful, really solid, maybe a little bit of rot, you know, right here in the middle maybe, but very little. It's been raining a lot up here, so it's moist on top. But anyway, here's this, you can see here, the I cut over here this, I cut the wedge out of this piece of blue oak, which is the trunk here that came out of it, you know, just came to it. This tree uprooted here, if you can see that, like I mentioned in the last video on this blue oak. And there was a lot of rain that year. And anyway, so this oak is still wet and beautiful and not rotted in this location of it, in this part of it. And so here it is. And here's actually the wedge that I just took out. And you can see its size. I mean, that's a hammer. And that's my arm there, my hand. But this is a big wedge. And my 93cc did it in like 2 minutes or less. It was amazing. And before I put on the rail and show you what that looks like, I just wanted to talk a little bit about blue oak compared to black oak. So blue oak, if you see down here, it's a little wet here around this area because of the rain, but the bark of the blue oak it's maybe a ½ an inch thick, 3/4 in some spots for a 150, 200-year-old tree. Black oak bark is like 3 or 4 times, probably 5, sometimes 6 times thicker than that, 1.5 inches thick bark. It's just a lot thicker. And then you get cedar, to compare it finally to cedar, which I cut a lot of. Cedar can be like 3 inches thick, the bark. Anyway, the other thing about this blue oak piece here is that it's straight. It's just a straight shot. And for blue oak, that's unusual. And that's why I'm so excited to have the opportunity to cut this up, because once I put the rail on, there's not going to be a lot of adjustment to it. And also I want straight boards. It just, with a straight trunk like this, it just makes cutting a lot easier with my mill. You know, I'll just use the force of gravity like I mentioned before, because it's a downhill slope here. That will help me and make it easier for me to glide the mill through this piece of wood. Yeah, it's really exciting. So here's the rail. It's sitting pretty well on top of this tree, but I'm going to be adjusting it. And I'll just show you a couple things about this system before I start adjusting it. So you can see here that the rail is not exactly resting horizontal, and it doesn't have to, because when you start cutting, nobody can tell where that it's been resting this way, because anywhere you cut into a log lengthwise, it's going to be at an angle when you look at it from a different angle. Anyway, just a couple things about this rail system is, here are these, I'll call them dog ears, but you've got two long rails here, and then you've got these crossbars, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 crossbars, and those lend support for the 2 long rails. And then you got these screws here, which actually are supporting screws to level everything out with the rail on the log, and they they do counter pressure from the log into the rail. So when you come across with a heavy mill and chainsaw, everything stays stable, along with these, I'll call them dog ears, that are going to be hammered in. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make some adjustments on this rail and get it ready for the first slice. So what I'm doing is I'm adjusting these screws, and I'll just show you here an example of it. And these screws again are to make contact. This screw is to make contact down here with the tree, and then it stabilizes the rail here because these screws are on the crossbars attached to the rail. And so you just take a little screwdriver here until this screw, you can start feeling it getting tight. And I'll check. So I've got over here, it's kind of leaning over there. So I'm going to press I'm going to bring this one down further, because this one I'm running out of screw and I need that to make contact also. So you can, I don't know if you can see it, it's hard to see, but the whole rail kind of moved because of this one screw on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 crossbars, which means 12 screws, because there's 2 screws per crossbar. And so here's another example for this screw here. It's not yet making contact down here, so I'll take the screwdriver, put it in until the screw makes contact with the tree. And it is, I feel it. And so I'm going to the next one. And what I'm doing here, so what I did down here is there was too much room between the screw and the tree. So I put wedges. These happen to be Oregon wedges. But I put wedges here, and so that the screw, so for example, this screw here is making contact with the wedge, and it gets tight that way. And it really doesn't matter how you get it tight, but this is like a little trick. If that part of the tree indents some and more than the other parts of the tree, and then the screw's too far away. That happens all the time. Anyway, I'm checking them now if it's pretty solid. And here I use my own wedge to wedge in here to create some more space, because this screw was a little far away. Check over here. That looks good. And over here, everything seems to be making contact. Maybe this one a little bit not. I'll screw this a little bit more. There we go. And the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to get the hammer and we got this hammer, and I just want to point something out about these dog ears. This gives ultimate stability to the rail, and there's 6 of them, like I said, because there's 6 crossbars, and to each crossbar is attached one of these dog ears. And if you notice down here, I put the dog ear at the very end, this 6th dog ear, and there's about 1 inch here, but it's a solid piece of wood. When I hammer it in there, it's great. And I'm going to hammer in each one of these 6. And if you look at the other end of this log, I've got the last dog ear, or the first one we'll call it, because that's the 6th one, and it's like 2 inches from the edge. And that's perfect, because the weight of the mill, which is like, I don't know, 30 pounds, something like that, maybe 25 pounds, with the chainsaw itself, another 15, 18, maybe 20 pounds, you know, you got like about 50 pounds. And so when it comes across to make the first cut, to make a flat surface, it's going to put a lot of weight in this area. And so I need a lot of stability. And that also means I want a crossbar right close toward the end also. because that will lend support. If I had a crossbar another, let's say, foot down there, then you've got a whole bunch of rail that's unsupported toward the end, and that's not good. And same thing down here at the other end. So I've got a crossbar which is, you know, maybe 10 inches from the edge, and with supported by this dog ear here. Anyway, so what I'll do now is I'm going to hammer in each one into the wood, and you can see it here, how it goes down into the oak. And I'm going to do it for each one of these. All, you know, there are 6 of them, like I mentioned. And then the last one. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and check my screws, because I find, and I found, I've learned through experience and sometimes the hard way, because I end up not getting a totally flat first cut, is that once I put in the dog ears after making all those adjustments that you just saw with the screws, and I mean the rails and the screws and these dog ears and the wedges there also, is that sometimes some of the screws end up not actually attaching anymore as well. So like, for example, this one, see? But now that this one right here, for example, but now that I have the dog ears in, when I do this time, it's gonna be very stable, and this is gonna be the final adjustment before I bring across the chainsaw. And I'll check them all. So if you see here, this one also got loose. So I'm going to lower this and now attach it firmly. Check that. This one's loose. But this is always this way. After you're making those initial, after you make the first adjustments, and then you put in those dog ears, hammer them into the wood, and this creates. These screws create contact with the tree, and so it is major support. So when the chainsaw is coming across here, it's got the support both of the dog ear and of the screws. This one, every one of them's a little bit loose, normal. Okay, they're all in there. And then I'm going to make one more. Well, actually what I'll do is I'll check this out. And it's really, really strong. Make sure it can hold 50 pounds as this moving chainsaw with the mill comes down. And it looks good. I'll probably hit these dog ears one more time. And I realize I should be generous, because I'm not going to be generous in hammering them in, because that gives a lot of stability, obviously. And I'm not going to be using that piece of wood, that first cut, which is called a jacket off a log. I'm not going to be using it for anything, for a table or anything. So I want these dog ears in there really good to hold all the weight. It's going to be coming down with my Alaskan mill, and it looks real stable. And then I'm just going to check out the rail and make sure that it looks level on both sides. It doesn't really matter if it's level. It doesn't really matter if it's level to the log, like I said, but if you look at that, it sure looks really nice and level. And nothing's perfect in the world. So, and that's fine with me. I don't need it perfect, but I just need it really good. And if you're looking at this as we look here, it looks great. And some people use a leveler to make sure everything's level, but I can just use my eyes, and I can see it's from one rail to the other. It's level all the way down. And I'm going to get ready now to make my first cut. And just before I start putting the mill together with the chainsaw, I just wanted to mention something about chainsaws. But before I do that, I want to just say that in the 70s, when I was in high school, I read this book called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. The book is still around. It's a classic. And I read the whole thing. And it's about this man who always loved motorcycles, but he never was able to get one. And I think it was later in like his middle age or something, he finally was able to get this really cool motorcycle. Maybe he finally was able to afford it, whatever. But he realized that if he's going to get this motorcycle and he's going to live his dream, which was to ride his motorcycle across the United States and stop and camp and with all the different stuff that he wanted to do on his motorcycle, that he better know how to maintain his motorcycle. And, you know, if he's going through a desert in Arizona or in Utah, and his motorcycle breaks down and he needs to be able to troubleshoot it and hopefully be able to fix it. And I mean, he realized that. He was a smart man. And I think he also wrote this book, so he's definitely a smart man. It's an amazing book. And so he learned everything he could about motorcycle maintenance. And so that he was ready to deal with what could come up with his motorcycle as he lived his dream. So he learned all the stuff about maintenance, and he described in his book, and this was like the amazing thing to me, he described in his book how he felt when he was doing maintenance on his motorcycle. Now, most people would think, oh wow, you know, like maintenance on a motorcycle, like it's what a chore. It's like such a pain. It's I got to get my hands dirty with the motor oil, and I have to figure out how to remove those bolts and put them back in, and figure out what's broken on the motorcycle and what I need to fix. But what he did, and his attitude was, this is beautiful. It's so beautiful that I have to do maintenance on my motorcycle because it's my way that I can live my dream, and I can be independent enough that I can go right across the United States and see the beauty of our country and just feel what he always dreamed that he would feel if he did that. And so the book talks a lot about, as he is actually doing maintenance on his motorcycle, and what he's doing with these bolts and this part and the troubleshooting, and, you know, pages and chapters, I think, if I remember correctly, of what he was repairing on the motorcycle or replacing, and what he felt from it, and that he felt so good doing it. And that book, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, always left a major impression on me. And when I got more than I deserved, and I was able to buy a house up here in Sequoia National Forest, actually in the Sequoia National Monument, which is part of the forest, and I merited that maybe 15 years ago or so. I started seeing the people up here who they're different than in LA, and a lot different. But I used a chainsaw here and there before that, but when you're up here in the mountains, and then if you have a house and all of a sudden a big limb falls down and you can't drive up your driveway, or you need firewood and it's getting toward winter, you know, I needed to learn how to use a chainsaw the real way. And actually I had a neighbor, Dave Crane, and he should rest in peace. He passed away about 2 years ago. He was the go-to mountain man on this mountain, and he taught me a lot about chainsaws. And you know, I was messing up my chains often and breaking them, and didn't know what to do with the chainsaw and whatever. And I said, you know, I better learn how to maintain and maintenance my chainsaw, just like the man in the book of Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance learned how to maintain and fix his motorcycle. And I said to myself, I need to do that so that I can live my dream of being up here in the forest. And I love wood, and I love live trees also. And, you know, so I could live my dream. And if something goes wrong with my chainsaw or it needs maintenance, I can do it right here. And it does all the time. Things happen all the time with the chainsaws. And, you know, so that book, it just left me with that impression. And so now when I maintain my chainsaw, it's really just a great part of the whole process of my experience, just loving and loving life, and you know, living my dream. Here's my chainsaw over here, and one thing that's really important, this is the big one, the big chainsaw, is, and I learned the hard way also on this, is so you see over here is the chain. And what happens when using a chainsaw for even 30 minutes or 40 minutes, sometimes this chain over here can get loose. Anyway, I'm pulling it here with my finger, and you can see there's not a lot of give. There's just enough give between the chain and the bar. And so the chain is still sufficiently tight, because if that chain gets too loose, and it's happened to me before, so I learned the hard way, is when I'm cutting the log, and that chain will fly off, and it could be dangerous, number one. And number two, it just ruins the day sometimes, because if you don't have a replacement chain, and now I carry replacement chains with me for just different reasons, hopefully not ever again because the chain's flying off, but you know, that we can keep cutting, and I can keep doing what I love. So I just wanted to mention that. Now I'm just going to put gas and oil in this chainsaw, because this Husqvarna 395 XP, like I mentioned before in a previous video, it's a beast. It's incredible, crazy, 93 cc. Some motorcycles, speaking of Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, some motorcycles are 90 cc. So this is a crazy strong chainsaw. So it eats a lot of gas. And always have to put the chain oil in also, because that has to run smoothly as it goes through the wood. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll put together our mill with this chainsaw. So this is the Alaskan mill on the two rails. So here are the rails. You can see the rails here. And you've got one rail's over here, down here. The other one is here. And the Alaskan mill is just sitting on it right now. There's no chainsaw in the mill. I'm going to put that in a minute. But the cool thing about the way this log is situated and the way I've situated this rail is that the rail is sitting on the completely on the just after the log. So I'll tell you, you can see from this side. And so I'm going to be able to fit my chainsaw into the rail. It's going to go right in here, and then it's going to come across the log, and then it's going to go in over here on this side. And I think I'll be able to do it quite painlessly, so to speak, meaning without too much exertion, because a lot of times if my log isn't situated so lovely on the forest floor, I've got to put my chainsaw into the mill, into the portable mill on the ground, and it's a lot harder. It's doable, no problem, but it just takes quite a bit more effort. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the chainsaw in the mill. Hopefully it will go in so it's balanced up here, and then I'll show you where the blade will, the chain of the bar will be in relation to the log. So there it is. And so you can see here that the first slice that will come off this log, creating what's called the jacket. It's called the jacket because the bark's still on it, and that's not what people generally are looking for when they slice wood in the forest or anywhere, including at big commercial wood mills. But anyway, so you can see that this is the piece right here above the bar that's going to be coming off on the first cut. That will be coming off on the first cut. And I think I want to lower the chainsaw probably another 1/4 inch, because that will create a much better surface for the mill and the chainsaw once the rail's removed. So I'll take the chainsaw out in the meantime to make that adjustment. And it's really easy to make that adjustment. Put the chainsaw back in. Slides right in. There it is. And so I'll show you a close-up of this in a minute, but now this chainsaw with this mill on the rail is cutting off what I consider the right size jacket, so that I'll have a flat surface after this to work with when I have my mill with the chainsaw without the rail, because I'm not you don't need the rail after this first cut. So I'll show you now what this looks like now that I've made these the chainsaw 6 5/8 down on those adjustments on this Alaska mill. So we're cutting off from here, over here on this log, to over here. And when that's gone, we're going to have a nice flat surface to make the second cut, third cut, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh cut on this log to get my my boards out of it. that's already cut is starting to pinch the chain in the bar. I'll put 2 more wedges in because it's I went up another 3 feet and it's starting to weigh down on the pinch the chain on the bar. At this, we probably got another 3 feet left in this 8-footer. So this is the first time that I've ever sliced an oak tree. And all the other times I've sliced cedar, like I said, very soft wood, very easy to slice compared to this oak. And I'm thankful I got all the way in. It looked like my chain started getting a little bit loose. And it's 4:05 right now in the afternoon, again on the day before Thanksgiving, November 27. I am thankful that I was able to have the opportunity to do my first cut on an oak tree, a blue oak. It's such a great feeling. It's like instead of Zen in the art of motorcycle maintenance, it's Zen in the art of chainsaw maintenance. It's an amazing feeling. I'm not a Buddhist, but I'm just saying the feeling, doing it all together, having the blessing of being able to learn how to maintain a chainsaw. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. I'm not going to do any other cuts this evening because it's getting close toward the latest sunset, the earliest sunset that is. But what we'll do now is I'm going to take off the rail from the first cut. We're going to look at the first cut, and we're going to look at the log with that first cut off, and we're going to see that blue oak, and I think it will be as beautiful as I imagine it to be. And we'll take a look. Actually, we can do that right now while we're at it. There it is. Amazing. And then let's turn over what I've been calling the jacket. There it is. So that's beautiful also. Really beautiful. And here's the log. And so you can see now I'm on the upper portion here. And so from bark edge to bark edge, on this side I got a little less distance, maybe 13 inches or so, maybe even more, 14. The other side seems to have a couple more inches on me, which is fine because that's wood, that's a log, that's a tree in the forest. But it's wet. You see the wet coming into the tree. It wouldn't have, if it didn't rain, you wouldn't have these moisture marks all around. And I don't think this would be, I don't think over here this would be moist. I think the bark absorbed the rain. There was a lot of rain over the last 3 days or so, especially 2 days, I guess. It's been like 4 inches of rain up here. But you can just look at this wood now. This here is moist, but it's not moist from the rain. It's moist because when this tree fell down three years ago or so, it did start drying out. You can see all here, this is where it started drying out. So it dried out about maybe three inches in, and on the other side also 3 inches in, but the whole center is still wet. And that's why I cut my stickers back in the city so that I can lay these slices out on a level floor with level stickers and dry out this wood for the next year or so. I also want to show you something I'm just noticing about this blue oak. So you can see this line. It goes all the way up for a while. So that line, it's actually not a crack. It's a thickened portion of the wood that naturally grew that way. I don't know exactly the specific process of how that came about. But when we slice this tomorrow, we'll see that that is not a crack. It's just a natural, beautiful imperfection in the wood. Same with this side. We have some of it here too, going up. This is on my right side, and it goes up here. That's not a crack. Now over here, there is a small crack on this side, but I don't think that's going to go too deep into the slab when we do that tomorrow, but we'll find out. But you still have a beautiful slab that's going to come out of this cutting tomorrow. And so there it is. And just I'll mention that oak is infamous for twisting and turning when it's made into slabs. So I'm looking forward to weighting this down once it's on the stickers, figure out how to weight it down. I mean, one, I'll weight it down with multiple slices of this tree. So the ones on the bottom will be the heavier ones, will be weighted down more than the ones on top. And then for the ones on top, I'll just figure out some very heavy stuff and in our house down the hill to put on, so that hopefully all that weight all along will keep these slabs straight as they dry over the next year or so.